Good evening all and welcome to another edition of the Female Educators Roundtable, back with our home education platform. This evening we have another guest who's going to be discussing home education from a secondary school perspective, which I'm pretty sure is a first for us. So just like last week where we had a first, again, we've got a different perspective to share with you all. And I'm very, very excited to introduce our guest. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our guest if she'd like to introduce herself. So Bianca, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi there everyone, I'm Bianca. I'm based in Birmingham and I'm a home educating mum of my son, who I started to home educate in year 8. So just when the pandemic started in March last year.
Okay. Alicia, did you introduce yourself?
Oh no, I didn't introduce you either.
You didn't introduce us, right? Anyway, let me introduce myself. Leave Alicia alone. My name is Ina. I'm one of the hosts on the show. I'm an educator, coach, and a mentor. I also have 2 other shows. I have a female educator roundtable on a Friday, where I interview female educators around the world we look at what it was like 12 months after pandemic. I also have a show on a Sunday where I look at what women have done in terms of their journeys, etc. And then I have a show in the morning time from 7 to 7:30. It's an online radio station. It's called Ace God Talk. And I'm looking at the education system. So I'm about everything education. So that's me. I feel now Alicia would like to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Alicia Scott. I'm a home educating mom and also an educator. I also do tuition and very passionate about education in general, especially special educational needs. That's where most of my experience, and also within the early years. So the very, very first start when you enter education.
Okay, thank you, Alicia. Take it away. You start.
Okay, so Bianca, why did you decide to become a home educator?
Well, I never knew what home education was when I've not come from a circle of people that home educate, so I didn't really know what that word was. And with the pandemic and with us going into lockdown and schools not really knowing where they stood, with me not knowing what home education was, but knowing that my child wasn't going to miss out, I said, well, it's on me now, it's not on school, and I'm going to make sure that my child's learning continues through the pandemic. And then I don't know how it came about, but I was told that's home education. That's what it is. And I was like, okay. And then I embarked the journey. And I think my real kind of wanting to home educate wasn't because I thought about it and it's something I wanted to do. It really stemmed from the pandemic. But on my journey, I've understood why the mothers that I've met through the journey have done this from the day the child was born, because it's such a natural thing to home educate. It's not something you think about all the time. And when I say it wasn't something I've thought about before, it was because I hadn't realised that my whole life that's what we've been doing as parents, but without knowing that that's what we've always been doing. We've been home educating our children. We've been teaching them without even knowing that we're teaching them. So that's how it all started, really.
Wow. Oh my goodness. So what was the process like in terms of, so you went to your local authority, when the children go back after the pandemic, you say to yourself, my child isn't going back, right?
Yeah, so it was a matter of contacted the local authorities, wrote a letter, the standard, they sent me a letter that I must fill out. Or I can't really remember if it was the school that sent me a letter that I filled out. And it was a very easy process. It didn't take very long. Filled out the letter that they gave me, the documentation, and that was it. It was as simple as that. It really is just like it was done in a matter of hours. I can't even say a matter of days. It was done within a matter of hours. Once the school knew that was your wishes, that you wanted to home educate, a letter was sent out to me through the post the next day. That was filled out and then sent back, and then that was it. It wasn't. I wouldn't say it was a long process. And that letter basically was just them asking you, "Are you sure?" And you're like, "Yes." And they're like, "Are you sure? Sure? Are you sure that you're going to look after your child that you gave birth to?" Crazy, right? So yes, so that's what we did. So we filled. So yeah, I filled out the form, and that was it. There was no issues at all. No, yeah.
It's interesting though. So have any local authority, social worker, anybody come to you regarding the education? Have you had a visit?
Not. No, absolutely not. There was a time that they wrote me a letter just to say that my son was still on the register of being home educated, and that was it. So they were just telling me that, he's still down as home educated, and that home education, that was it. There was nobody had contacted me or anything like that. It was just a automatic letter. That's the word I was trying to look for. One of those letters that just say, "Hi there, you've still got your child down as home educating," and that was it. Absolutely no issues at all.
So nobody come and check to see how you are educating your child?
No.
Whoa. No. That is so interesting. That is so interesting. That is so interesting. That's so interesting. Alicia, take over.
And something that you said that really resonated with me, Bianca, was when you said about parents being like a child's, or parents carers being like a child's first educator, because that's something that I used to always stress to parents, like at home visits, when they used to think that once the child was handed over to us and they started nursery or they start school with us, they used to think that was it, that their role would just stop. And I used to have to explain to parents, that's not how it works. You are your child's first educator. You're the one that, saw them take their first steps, helped them, say their first words, played with them, did things that helped them to be who the little person they are today. And I just feel that some parents do forget that though. They seem to think that once a child's in school, it's school full stop, and that is not the case. It should never be a case of you relying on the school to just educate your child, because there's so many things that school can't educate your child that you as a parent need to do. And I think also what you said, that a lot of parents decided because of the pandemic to educate their children because they saw for themselves that, wait a minute, school's not doing the job that I thought they were doing. I assumed a lot of parents are like, oh, probably thinking, oh yeah, my child's getting this, but then when they actually had their own children at home, they were like, wait a minute, my child's actually quite rude, or my child doesn't know this, my child doesn't know that. And it's like, well, how did you miss these things? How did you miss these things? And I think that's very true, that we can see from the statistics that so many parents decided to home educate because of the pandemic, because their eyes were wide open. I think a lot of parents, their eyes were wide open. They were like, wait a minute, school is not school full stop, and it should never have been that way.
There's an interesting thing you said, Debbie. You said they didn't check up on me. In the home education community, that we have kind of preferred for the local authority to not check on us, because we do see it as a form of we don't believe that authorities are in the position to judge how our children are learning.
Mm-hmm.
But protocol wise, if I wasn't doing the right things, yes, it's quite worrying. You'd think, why local authorities not taking any action? But it's a double-sided sword. There are kids in households that, you would want, local authority to check in on, because anyone could say they're home educated and they're not actually home educated. But there are a lot of people who I would say that when they have had that visit, although we know that the local authority mean good and they're not there to kind of do anything other than just check the child's learning, sometimes that can be interpreted in the wrong way. Once you're in a home educating space, your mind shifts from, I'm taking my child to school and my child listens to what you say, to my child's now learning with me, and you now don't have a say on how I do that. So it's crazy, right? Because it's like when you're that school mom, you have one mentality. Once you become a home educating mom, so it's a different mentality. It's I think
That's interesting.
Yeah, depends on who it is.
That's interesting. What do you think are the benefits of home educating?
The benefits of home educating, no word of a lie, is that for the first time, you're able to get your child to understand a topic from the beginning. Now, the way it works here in the UK, as opposed to the Caribbean or parts of the world, is when a child starts school, they never start learning from the basics. They learn, so if there's a book, a textbook that the teacher's working from, they might start from the second page, the fourth page. If they're talking about trees, for example, they'll never talk about the seed of the tree. They'll just talk about the color of the tree and then the leaves. When you home it, and that then reciprocates until the end of your school life, until you do GCSEs. Hence why a lot of children probably struggle when they get to GCSE stage. Home educating children, you could talk to them about a tree, but you're talking to them from the basics. So you would say, here's a seed. Do you know how a seed is made about? And then what do you do? Then you plant the seed. From planting the seed, you then get roots. From the roots, you get the trunk. Then you get the branches. Then you get the leaves. And then we need the weather in terms of the sun to keep allowing, the trees to continue to grow. Now, when you do that to a child from birth, they become little Einsteins by the time they're 16. Because that child, because we've got two sides of our brains, when the child's at school, teachers teach you, not all teachers, but the system is there to make you only use one side of your brain. Home educating children use both sides of their brain. Not because they're smarter than children in school, but it's because mom and dad are teaching in a different way. Teachers don't always have the time to teach from the beginning. If you know what they're talking about, you know it. If you don't, you don't. I'm still going to get paid after in the next 30 days. But as mum and dad, we take the time out because it's our baby, it's our precious gem. So we take the time out to teach our children from scratch. So one of the benefits of home educating my son was some of this funny things that you might think are irrelevant, like, why is it raining? I was able to say to my son, what is rain? Can you tell me what rain is? What's the definition of rain? Why is it raining? And then what are the clouds made out of? Is there acid in the rain? So now we're having a science lesson and a geography lesson because it's raining here. Is it raining all over Birmingham? Is it just here in our area that it's raining? What causes the clouds to be grey? So we're going more in depth without even knowing we're going in depth. And I just think that, unfortunately, because I've been through the school system, And we do end up leaving with so many gaps in our knowledge. Most British-born people will say that by the time they took their GCSE, it was just a remembering game. As long as you could remember them answers. And to me, for my child, that worked for me. But that's not, I didn't want the same for my child. I want my child to know something thoroughly, because as an adult, you struggle. If someone said to me today, why does it rain? What's rain made out of? What's the 3 elements of rain? I don't know. But you should know. You should know. I don't know, because I wasn't taught. I wasn't taught. I was just taught it rains. But my son will be able to tell you the atoms, how the rain's made up. And that's only because he's been home educated. So that's, I would say, yeah, that's the main benefit, that having your children in school is excellent, but just understand that the schools are under they're under time constraints, and you have to understand that there is only 6 hours. And there's different year groups. They don't have time to be teaching you from scratch. And like Sister Alicia said, the gaps is what you, mom and dad, should be doing, not school.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Funny, this is exactly what Alicia constantly talk about when she say about home educating, in the sense that you could take a child from the beginning, go right through. Because I remember when I first interviewed Alicia regarding her daughter, she educated her daughter, and that's one of the things she said, because she herself being an educator, it is so interesting because, you know, she said one of the things was she could take her from the scratch to continue, and even though she don't know it, it doesn't matter. You don't have to stress, leave it. We come back to it another day. Whereas in school, you don't have time to come back. I said to my student yesterday, we've gone through this topic. Remember, you guys need to go over it, because I'm testing you guys next week. You know, I am not going over it again because I've already gone through it. We have to go to the next topic. So you never finish a topic completely and in detail. It is so very true, because that's one of the things as an educator I'm struggling against, because I'm one of these, when I'm teaching, I like to teach it in depth, but I'm not allowed to because of a time's constraint. Because in all schools I taught in, one thing they said to me, have you finished X amount of topics? No, I haven't. You know, you need to finish it because, you know, we have to prepare them for the exam. And then sometimes I feel so pressurized that Absolutely. I have to do this because of the exam. I tell you, sometimes as a teacher, I think, oh my goodness, what do I do here? You know, so I see that.
There's only so much you can do. There's only so much. And in the world of teaching, there are the tasks there, the curriculums there, and that's kind of it. You are working towards a curriculum, and you have to go to bed at night knowing that some children will get the education they need outside of school. Good for those children, because those parents understand that not everything they can learn in school. But then you've got those other children who's, when they go home, that's it. That's it. You know, my son, he's been in school all his life. But because I did my own learning with him, I hope to believe I was filling in the gaps. But then I know there's mums out there that, like Alicia said, from 9 to 3 o'clock, after 3 o'clock, that's the end of that. And that's the end of that. So you can imagine in that child's mind, they're just learning bits and pieces. Because I was like that. If you had asked me in secondary school, explain a topic thoroughly, no, I can't. But I can pass my GCSEs because our teachers taught us to just revise, memorize the words.
That's all it is.
Memorize those words.
Yeah.
It's sad though.
Had the same conversation. The only reason that I passed my physics and my chemistry exams and even my maths exam to an extent was because the night before, it was literally the night before, and even before I went into the exam, I memorized the textbook, the same, whatever, is it CGP or whatever they are, those same textbooks that are still going strong. I just memorized it. I didn't know what I was applying, but they're the only reasons why I did so well in physics and chemistry, because I didn't have a clue. I used to sit in those classes, I was lost. I used to sit and think, why am I here? There's clearly children who know what the teacher's talking about. I didn't have a clue what the teacher was talking about. I was used to sit there just thinking, what is going on? But I thought once I worked out, all I need to do is memorize what's in this textbook, regurgitate when I do my GCSEs. I thought, I'm going to pass. And my method was true. My method was true. And that is, Debbie and I was having the same conversation. Teachers are just taught to teach the test, and it is just remembering game. We're not taught to apply the knowledge or to actually even understand what it is that is being taught.
It is so true though. So if you're a teacher that want children to understand it, like somebody like me, I'm stuck. It's like my son keep on saying to me, Mom, all I have to do is have a good memory. And he keep on laughing and he saying, Mom, you know, education is about just having a good memory, right? You know, that's all it is, Mom. You know that, right? And I said to him, yes, I do know that. And, you know, you kind of feel away because you're in the system. And when your child is saying to you, you know, Mom, all you do need to do is just remember, just have a good memory. And, you know, he's telling the truth, but I just have to laugh. I cannot say, well, son, you are so right. I just have to laugh. By laughing, he knows that I'm connecting with what he's saying. It's true. It's true.
You know how much gaps are in your knowledge when you have a baby. When you have a child and you realize, I don't know, that because remember, children actually the basic things, and you can't answer the basic things. So that's when you know, for the first time, whenever you've had children, some people have their children early in life, some people have it late in life, but whenever you have that child will get you to realize that your whole secondary school life was filled on gaps, because your children will ask you the root of things. Children never ask you the end of something. They always say, but why? And you're like, well, I told you that already. And they're like, but why? And you're like, I don't know why. I don't know. And then you realize, you're right, I don't know. I actually don't know. And you don't know, especially if you're from a background where you didn't have parents that did do extra education with you, you don't know. So so with my son, I hope to think I did fill some gaps out. But how much gaps can you do, you know? You know, but I can truly say the homeschooling moms that have done it from birth, I wouldn't say those children have gaps, only because they've never been in school. So everything they've learned, mom and dad has been able to teach them straight from the beginning. So if you're holding an apple, when you tell that 2-year-old, here's an apple, that mom is going to say, it's got seeds. This is where the seeds go. I'm going to take you to the allotment to show you where they come from. I'm going to show you some videos to show how they grow from the ground. I admire the homeschool moms that have done it from the beginning. I'm like, only if I knew about this back then.
Oh no, it's so true. I totally agree. If only I'd known, I definitely wouldn't have put my daughter down for school. If only I'd known what I know now, I definitely would not have enrolled her in school, because she was that child that was from at school, like in breakfast club, up until after school club, and always the last child to be collected. And that's no way. That was her life from reception. That's not right. It's not normal. That's not normal for a 4-year-old to be in that environment so young, and just having to navigate the school system and all that it comes with. So if I'd known, I definitely, like yourself, Bianca, I would have home educated from the very, very beginning, because I just admire those moms. And it's true, their children they have life skills. They have life skills, and they understand, they can navigate the world. They're not going to suffer. If anything, they're going to thrive even more, because they've been taught the very basics from the very beginning. and they would be able to navigate the child better than just navigate the world better than a child that hasn't had that experience, because they've had real, genuine life experience that you can't replicate. School can't replicate.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I just have one last thing to say before we move on. That I know that the GCSE results came out last month, and some of the parents that I know whose children was getting those 9s were home educated children. And yeah, because I'm doing this for the first time. When I had started home educating, I didn't have enough contacts who had, at that time when the first results had come out. So that would have been like last year, before I had deregistered my son. But this year it's been like a whole year. And when they were saying, oh, you know, my daughter's got like a 9 all across the board, I was like, wow, that's powerful. In most of, I think one lady's like, her daughter got like 2 8s and the rest were 9s. I was like, and the moms are saying it so casually, like, oh, my daughter got like all 9s and 2 8s. I'm like, are you not going to celebrate tonight? Are you not going to go out tonight? But these are moms that have been doing it from day one. So it's not that they don't want to celebrate, but they had a plan. And they're not in the system. So in their head, it's almost like it's a 9, and the 9 seems like a big thing if you're in the school system. But a 9 to a homeschool mum is like, wow, I know my child's intelligent because I've been teaching my child since he was born, or since she was born. So I was just like, I was more happy than the mum was. I was like, wow, you got 2 8s. I was like, wow. And that was about three moms, and they did that. Those were the results they got. So I didn't know what to say. I was just like, congratulations. And that really, I mean, every child is different, but I just thought, for those that want to continue home educating, these are the results that we're talking about. This is, you know, they're not lying. These are real people that I know. And yeah, I just thought, wow, it's all down to you. You know, your child can go to any college, any university. You know, that child will never, you see, when those results come through the door, your options now is like limitless, because your child's not just going to go to a college. Your child can apply to some of the top colleges and not even have to do much, because the grades speak for itself. So yeah.
So we spoke about the benefits of home education. Now we're going to speak about, so what do you feel that traditional school lacks? What do you feel that it's not able to provide for children?
I think traditional school, I think going back to what like the benefits of home educating, I think traditional school is okay. I just think that they just lack in terms of just not being able to explain a subject fully. But I think traditional school is okay. Luckily for me, because my son's always been in the education system, so I've seen the best of both, and I think that's the only thing I can say in terms of learning with traditional schools, is that time constraint. You're not able to learn. Yeah, that's the only thing I can think of in traditional school, because everything else is more behavioral type of issues, or kind of the emotional type of issues, social emotional type of issues. But if we're talking solely about learning, I would just say it's only just because it's just, you know, you can't really do a subject thoroughly from the beginning. But other than that, I think it's fine.
Well, I came across, just because it popped into my head when you were speaking before, Bianca. So I came across a post on Facebook where a parent, just to see what your take, both of you, what your take on this. So a parent wasn't happy that her child had managed to, you know, the drawstring that you have on your PE shorts. Her child had managed in a lesson under teacher supervision to tie themselves to the table, and then the child also managed to get scissors to cut themselves free, and she only discovered what the child had done when the child got home and said to their mum, "Oh, you know, this is what happened in class today. I had to cut my short string because I tied myself to a table because I was bored." And she put the post in the group because she wanted to ask other people, like, what are their thoughts. And I always like reading the comments, things like that. I always go straight for the comments. I don't ever give my opinion. I always go straight for the comments. And it was really interesting. I thought people would have really been on, like, said that, you know, the teacher should have noticed a child tying themselves to a table and then getting scissors. But a lot of the parents and a lot of the comments were made was like, oh, you know what? You don't know if the teacher was stressed. You know, you don't know what she's going through. She's got 30 plus children to keep an eye on. But my take on it is, I'm sorry. Yes, you know, you have got 30 kids to keep an eye on, but in your lesson, how can you not notice a child tying themselves to a table? That is serious. So but it was interesting. So it's interesting to see what your take on that would be, both of you.
It's interesting. It depends on the age. It depends on the age group of the children. Because I'm now looking at it in terms of with my secondary children, my secondary student, I know that they would take the scissors, because it's interesting. Yesterday I was noticing one of that, whereby they took the scissors and they were cutting up, you know, they're cutting up the various areas of the lesson, right? Because this is I think it's year 10. I think it was year 10. So let's say I give them a handout, right? So they're cutting it out to stick it in the book. And for me, if I'm teaching you, whatever I'm teaching you, you shouldn't be cutting out no paper. That's me. So I said to them, I said, what are you doing? Oh, miss, I'm cutting out the circle to put it in my book. No, you need to do it another time, not in my lesson. During my lesson now, you need to be focusing. So I went over and I took the scissors, right? Because you see, it depends on the teacher. For me, I'm not saying it's not going to happen in my class, right? Because children are sneaky. I'm only talking from secondary, because I'm always walking up and down my classroom, see what my students are doing. They're rocking back the chair, I'm seeing, and it's like, they say, Miss, you got eyes behind your back. Yes, I do have eyes behind my back, because I'm walking up, I'm parading my class, right? I walk from the top of the class to the bottom of the class. I see every student, I see what they're doing. I see one of them, they decide to sneak a gum and then try to eat. And what do you think you're doing? Well, Miss, what is it? I said, yes, I saw you. Because I am not a teacher who stand at the top of the classroom. And I know a lot of teachers stand at the top of the classroom and they talk and they teach. I'm one of these teachers who parades my classroom, because A, I need to know what you're doing. B, I need to see that you are engaging in the task I ask you to do. So that's how I teach. I cannot really blame teachers who don't like getting up, because some teachers like sitting at the desk. I can't sit at the desk. I don't sit at the desk. I sit at the desk to take my register. After that, I would be paraded. Then I come back and I sit on the desk, that I could see what my students are doing. In primary school, if that was a primary school situation, I'm sorry, teacher. You should be seeing what your primary school children are doing, right? You should have eyes behind your back. You know, because you should be knowing because you see, that child would have taken that scissors and cut something else with it. So there are two questions I'm asking. Where did the child got the scissors from? Right? And why was it in the situation where the child was so busy tying something and the teacher didn't even notice that this hand was not on the table?
Yeah.
You see, that's what concerns me here, whether or not it's primary or secondary. I also said to my students, where's your pen? But Miss, it's like one student said to me yesterday, where's your pen? Why are you not writing? Miss, you said to us, don't write, keep it in our head. I said, oh yes, I did say that. I'll come back and ask you the question just now. You see, the play smart, right? So things like that. See, I don't know. I can't really blame the teacher too much, and I can't, I don't know. It depends on, in a primary school, sorry, I would say it's a safeguarding issue here, because the teacher should be conscious of what these children are doing. In a secondary school, there's a little bit leeway, right? Because you expect them to act a little bit more mature. However, I think as teachers, we should be, okay, yes, COVID time, so therefore you should, if you're not allowed to parade the class, that's fine, but you should be looking to see which students' hands are, because it should be on the desk writing.
Absolutely. What's my views on that? Gosh, the time, all I can think of is it must have just been, was it primary school?
Yeah, I think it's definitely primary school, because I think the mum, I can't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure it was year 2. But the mum,
year 2,
her daughter,
Alicia,
I think it was year 2.
You tell me year 2.
Yeah, she said she was just more concerned the fact that she's so intricately tied herself to the table that then to break free, she had to get scissors. She said that's what more concerned her. And then when she asked her child, why did you do that? The child was like, I was bored. So I just thought, you know what, let me undo my PE shorts and tie myself to the table, because the child didn't think that, but the mum was like, she just doesn't understand why it didn't get noticed. She was like, okay, she said maybe she can get that, she could have got away with it a little bit, but the fact that she said her daughter had tied herself to the table, the teacher should have noticed that she was struggling. Like, she just said it just wasn't making sense to her. And her poor child, I think her child was more concerned about the fact that they had to cut themselves free, and was thinking the mum would be upset about the shorts. But the mum doesn't care about the shorts. The mum is more concerned that they had the time to do that when your child is being sent to school to be educated. And the fact that she wasn't being educated or even watched.
That's concerning.
The comments that were being made, like the comments were just very saying supportive, saying, oh, teachers can't keep an eye, but I just found the comments really interesting. I was like, yes, to me it's a concern that child was so bored, first and foremost, that they had the time to do that. And the teacher must have had a point, unless she's that type of teacher that was just literally at the board for however many minutes. But you should have taken the time to then go to the tables. How did you not notice?
You see, that's my concern. And now you're telling me it's a year, it's a year 2 child.
It definitely was primary, definitely wasn't secondary.
You see, that is even more concerning, because it's a year 2 child. So where did the child get the scissors from? Unless they had the scissors on the table for activity. But that's even worse, because you should be observing what they're cutting. They could have been cutting the clothes.
Yeah, she did. It was just an interesting post, and I guess the mum, I don't know what the mum was seeking, because no one did give her advice to go and speak to the head or anything like that. People were just saying, oh, try and put yourself in the teacher's shoes. We're all going through a difficult time. But to me, I would be concerned if my daughter came home and said to me, oh, mummy, this is what I did today. You tied yourself to the table. I wouldn't be happy. I'd be like, sorry, you did what? How did you manage to do that first and foremost?
Exactly.
Why did they think of that?
And then you cut yourself up. That's the whole thing. You tie yourself and you got the scissors and you cut the cord off. That's what's so concerning about all of this.
The poor child didn't know how to break themselves free, and she didn't want to cause a fuss. It was just, it was an interesting read, and I just thought, oh, definitely always straight to the comments. When I see posts like that, it's like, nope, not going to have an opinion. I just want to go straight to the comments.
Yeah, I do that as well.
But it just popped into my head when we were talking about time constraints on the teachers. And that just remembering that popped into my head. I was like, oh, could we say that that's a time constraint, that the teacher was so engrossed in her lesson that she didn't have the time to notice that the child was clearly distracted.
Yeah, but isn't that what teaching is supposed to be, though? You're supposed to be seeing what your children are doing in the classroom.
Yeah, it's true. Very, very true.
That's an interesting that's interesting, because even students saying to me, a student said to me on Thursday, Miss, I think you should go and have a little sit down because you keep on walking up and down the classroom. I said, what are you up to? My first thing, what are you up to? I say, you're up to something, so you want me to sit down. Sorry, I'm not sitting. I'm just going to come back. I say, I'm just going to circle around the other side and come back.
Up to something.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting. Interesting. Anyway, thank you for that. The other question is, we know that when children are in primary school, they become very curious. However, when they do the transition to secondary school, they lost that curiosity. And even in terms of their grades, they lose the high grades that they had from primary school, because primary school seems to, they achieve very high, but in the transition to secondary school, that is lost. How do you think that as a home educator, mom or parents, that you're able to maintain the curiosity which that your child had in primary school to now in secondary level? How are you going to maintain the curiosity as a homeschooler? Or how have you done that?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. What I did with my son was it was the types of learning or ways of learning that we did. So sometimes most of the time it was visual learning, making sure that he was watching a video on the topic when I could. I think that's the only thing I could do, was just to keep him engaged, keep him curious. Is the videos do help. Listening to podcasts, that helped as well. I know the BBC have several podcasts. I think the one my son used to listen to was a science one, or was it geography? I can't remember. That because that is a bit different from the traditional pen to paper. It's more of people having a conversation like what we're doing now, and he would just sit there and just listen. But yeah, I think that's the only thing I could do, I guess. And I feel like it worked. I think audio and visual is still learning, but it's just a different way of processing things. So yeah, that's all I could think of.
Okay, thank you.
Well, that links into what we were saying last week, Bianca. I don't know if you saw our show last week, but we were saying that it's good when you do incorporate all the different learning styles, because in school, they don't really account for the fact that not all children learn in the same way. So at least that way with your son, you were incorporating all those different learning styles. And that way you knew that he was able to get the most from the resources that you were using.
Yeah.
So the next one, in what way do you feel that home education prepares young people to navigate the real world?
Sorry, what was that, Alicia? This is my son, he's gaming.
It's okay. In what ways do you think that home education prepares young people to navigate the real world?
I feel that it goes back to what I was saying before. They grasp the real world because the gaps are being filled. So going back to just explaining about the trees example that I made, but imagine if you explain in the same way about money, or you explain that in the same way about let's say, like working. So I know in school, you kind of just get a careers advisor, which comes in and, they're good and all that, they are good in, spending time with the children, telling them what job options they can do. But it's also more about just explaining, the method of getting those jobs. The careers advisor will sit on the computer, show you what's available, and then if you apply, you apply. If you don't, you don't. And normally the careers advisor will just tell you the summary, what's on the computer, which you could have read anyway. The entry requirements, what you need to get the job, and that's it. Home educating parents kind of tell you the process. So they let you know that, you're going to apply to this particular college, for example, and this is what colleges are looking for. If you don't get X, Y, Z, you won't be able to get into that college. This is what the colleges want. This is what's going to happen whilst you're in the college. When you go to get a job, you're going to have to wake up on time. You're going to have to do this for the employer. I just feel like as home educating parents, you're just more explaining the process and what's going to happen when you're there, rather than the school will just say, these are your options and you can just apply. With my son, with most of the home education that I did in terms of preparing for life, I would say I didn't do too much of that. I did kind of make him look on the internet of jobs in the future, or if he was to be self-employed, what that would look like. But I didn't go too much into it. But for the mums that I have gone into it, it's more just the method. If we're talking about things that are non-educational, it could just be little things like just cleaning up after yourself. That still prepares you for the real world. I know on a school day, no one ain't got the time, because on a school day, we just need to have something to eat, get ready, and we have to get out the house. Please get out the house. We are going to be late. We need to get out the house. But when you're home educating, you can say, you can just put this in the kitchen. You can just rinse your cup out. You can wash the bath out after yourself. We do have to go to the petrol station to get to places. I just think home educating parents, it's more just the method. I would just say that's the only kind of added value to preparing our children for the real world. It's just explaining the method.
Thank you. Right. What are some of your challenges and triumphs of home educating?
The successes is being able to explain things from scratch. The downfalls would be especially because my son he's a school child. He's always been in school. So that element of being in the classroom with friends. Now, the other home educating moms I know, they've got big families. Some of them got 6 kids. So they've got their classroom. They've got their classroom. Yeah. So, but if you are a parent who has got 1 child or even 2 children, I think that would be the only thing for that child, is they may miss being around other kids in the school and stuff like that. But then if you're a homeschooling parent that's done it from birth, I guess your child wouldn't know the difference. So if a woman's pregnant right now and she wants to home educate, and that's the only child that she's going to have, yeah, that kid will be fine because that's all that kid would know. But if you have just got 1 or 2 children and they've been in the school system, then you've taken them out of the school system. Yeah, they may miss being in a classroom, being with friends. But yeah, I that's the only thing really.
So how do you balance that out? How do you try to ensure that your child have the element of socialization?
Yeah, so first of all, it's knowing your child, first of all, because not every child likes socialization. There's some home educated children that don't actually want to be with other home educated children, funny enough. You can balance it out by doing I would say extracurricular activities, but that's what they say in school anyway. But these are things that are, I would say, more physical activities. So any hobbies that your children have. So I know for the girls, it could be any kind of sports like tennis, gymnastics, dancing. If she's into art, maybe crafts, and she can play, if she knows how to play an instrument, it might be that. And that can be done in groups. That can be done with home educating groups that you're in, or it can just be just you doing your own thing in a group when you get to whatever hobby it is that your child wants to do. For the boys, whatever your boy's into, whether it's football, rugby, American football, it could be swimming, anything like that. Again, you can look for home education groups that are doing the same thing, or that child may already have friends outside that they can do that with. See, my son's a gamer, so he's got his group of friends. I get a heart attack when I say that because it's my worst nightmare. He's having a gamer. It's nice because he's a good gamer and he's, but for me as mom, it's just like, oh gosh, I don't like it. But my son's got his friends. We're quite fortunate in the sense that he has always been in school, so he has got those friends. My son never needed to make home educated friends, and the odd friends that he could have made friends with within the home educating community, he didn't want it. He likes to be with the friends that he's got now, his gaming friends. But if my son did want to be around the home education community and those friends, there's so many of them. There's always trips to go on. When you're at traditional school, you can only do trips like on the weekend or in the half term. But when you're home educating, you could go on a trip every day if you can do it. If you can do it, you can go. So the socialization, you've just got to make it work for you. I think.
Right. Thank you. So in other words, in terms of socialization doesn't, a lot of people feel that homeschooling, the children are missing out on socialization, right? Alicia is nodding her head. But we also know that in terms of, because there's so many homeschooling group and homeschooling trip, Alicia is always talking about, it means that the child would always have an opportunity to go on those homeschooling trip if the child wants to. So in terms of socialization, they're not even missing out because they're socializing with the homeschooling crowd if they want to. So in terms of when people say home educating, the children missing out on socialization, it's a myth, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If anything, they have a better social life than we do. If anything.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely primary school age. Definitely once the secondary school ones. See, with my son, it's a double situation because first of all, he's in secondary school, and secondary school kids in itself don't really want to make new friends. And on top of that, he's a school child, so he's made his friends. But if I give you an example of one of the home educated moms that I know who did it from birth, her daughter's the same age as my son, teenager, and she actually said, you know what, my daughter never really wanted to. Her daughter never really wanted to be with the other home educated children, which I thought was strange. So I thought, you know, if you've been doing it from birth, maybe she might, I don't know, that's all she knows. But she's funny enough, she says in the days, yes, when she was younger, yeah, she did want to, but once she became 12, 13, she would just be like, no, I don't want to go. I think it's just a teen thing.
Yes,
but,
yeah.
Yeah, with my son, he's actually been in school, so he's made his friends. So no, we didn't have any. My son hasn't met any other home educating children. He hasn't.
Thank you for that.
Last question. So what are 3 tips that you would give to someone that's considering home education?
3 tips would be, when you first deregister your child and you make that decision that you're going to home educate, that first things first is you can't compare yourself to the way it was in school. So I find that when you first start home educating, you want to mimic the school, mimic the curriculum and all of that. So the first thing you need to do is kind of put that to one side and make a fresh timetable for you and your child. So if your child likes cooking, get them to cook. If your child likes swimming, get them to swim. If your child likes maths, train them to become an accountant. Because when I have my business one day, I'm going to need all these little kids to do my accounting. That was a joke, actually. The second tip is to the second thing for me, I would say, and I'll think about this one, is to understand that not all children can be home educated. Some children do need to be back in traditional school. So if there's anyone here that wants to home educate and then you get to 3 months home educating, even if that's what you're set on, that's what your mindset on, just be a bit flexible, because you may let that child go back to school for a month again, and that child may then make the decision that actually I want to go back with my mum or my dad. When you force it, sometimes it can go a bit wrong. When you force it, you kind of lose the child completely, because now it's not something they want to do. So they'll just, children will find a way to go to what they want to be in. And when we force as parents, that's the worst thing. So if you do find that the child is more wanting to go to school, as a parent, you can feel dishonored. You're thinking, you know, does the child think the teacher can teach you better than me? You know, you start thinking all kinds of crazy things like, am I not good enough? Am I not good enough? But it's not that. It's just, we have to be honest. Home educating for some children, it's just not for them. It's just not for them. And the third thing, so yes, always just be flexible with your approach. And the third tip I would say is just to try. Don't feel ashamed to kind of ask questions to the other home educators. Even now, I sometimes shy away from asking questions because I'm just like, oh, I don't know what that response is going to be. But that's what I had to do. I had to ask questions, especially if you're a homeschooler that's coming to this later on in the child's life. It's different if you've just gave birth and you know that's your plan and you know you've been doing it from birth. But my experience was different. I hadn't home educated my child, so I was just asking a lot of questions. You know, where's the cheapest place to get paper from? What broadband provider are you with? Because I need better Wi-Fi because now we rely on a lot of the internet. What deals can you get in terms of taking my child here, there, and everywhere? So, yeah, I'd always just say don't shy away from the questions, because if you don't ask the questions, it can make your journey a bit more not challenging, but you're not just thinking about yourself, but you're thinking about the child as well. So if you have got a burning question like, should I do this, or do I need this letter, or do I need this document, it can put a bit of pressure on the family. So I would just always just say, if you are in groups, even if you're not in groups but you're on social media, just ask the questions. And yeah, that's my 3 tips.
Thank you so much, Bianca. They're amazing tips, especially like the first one where you said about don't try to mimic school. I think that's where a lot of parents did struggle at when they first started home educating. They were trying to replicate school, and it was like, no, just because the teacher has sent home how many worksheets or was saying that this was getting covered in a day, I knew for a fact that that was not getting, that much was the curriculum was not getting covered in one day. I had a friend, and I was home educating her child just to help her out, and she was literally stressing herself out going through like 6 subjects a day. And I said to her, you do realize that this doesn't happen? And she was so like set on following the school and trying to mimic the school that she was like, but what are you trying to tell me? I was like, in a roundabout way, what I'm trying to tell you is the school's lying to you. I was like, there's no way that these 6 subjects get taught in the 6 hours. I said, you've got to factor in that hour lunchtime. I said, you've got to factor in the 2 sets of breaks that children get. I said, have you really been stressing out yourself and your child covering all of these subjects? And she was like, yeah, but the teacher, I said, stop right there. I said, stop right there. I said, let me strip it back. I said, as long as we cover maths and English, I said, that's what I did with her son. And then we focused on being more creative. And I said to her, we can get a lot of learning just from doing something more creative and trying to, sense where he's at in terms of this transition that he's having to go through. I said, I think for you to, what she was doing was just trying to mimic school. And it was a recipe for disaster. It was an absolute recipe for disaster. And I like when you said create your own timetable. That I think that's the first thing that I did when everyone else was stressing about home education. I was so excited. I was literally so excited. And me and my daughter, I thought, forget all the worksheets that were being sent home. I thought, we're not doing that. I said, we're going to learn about what we want to learn about. This is the first time, we've got autonomy. I was like, we're going to use it. And we got into things like mindfulness, meditation, yoga, things that school should be doing, but unfortunately, they don't have the time to. So I think, your tip is fantastic.
It is. It can be. It is nice. I started it. My child was a teenager, so you could go as far as saying that he's already had his mindset. He already, he's a child. You can imagine he was 13. He's been in the system a long time. So my journeys is slightly different, and those that have secondary school kids will know what I mean. He's already been in the system. So for me, it was just more about just keeping on top of things, keeping on top of his maths, his English, and doing things that he liked. He would do his sports on the weekend and all that. But when I see the home educating moms that have got the younger children, so the 4-year-olds, the 5-year-olds, it's good. It's good. But I have to put it out there. My son, he did go into it later on. So, but that just goes to show that, even though we went into it late, I still I still did it, still attempted it. But yeah, if you can do it from young, it's better. It is better. Everybody has their reasons to why they do it. For me, it was just because of COVID. My son was fine in school. There was no issues. He was fine in school. And that's why home education never came onto my mind. It really was just because of Boris, the famous Boris, obviously said that the schools needed to close, and we just didn't know how things was going to be. But it's good, and it's a nice bond. It's kind of as I've got to make sure my son doesn't hear me now, because he'll really get upset. This is the first time it felt like when he was born again. We felt so close. It was the first time since I had him. I felt like I was with my baby. I felt like I was with my baby, and there was no interference from anyone. The last time I felt that way, when I was home educating, was probably when I just had him. Probably the first, the first 2-3 years before they start nursery and stuff like that. It was just me and him, and there was just no, there's no school, because they don't start school until they're 5. Well, for my son 6, because he's got a late birthday. He's born in September, but life changes, when they start school. You're in the system, basically. That's just it. But homeschooling, I felt like I was with my baby again. And the bonding time, I never thought I'd get that again. When that stage is gone, you don't think you're going to get a time again. And I think when we all went into lockdown, that's what we were given. We were given that gift of being with our babies again. Well, if your child was at school anyway. Probably not all the mums that were homeschooled from birth, but a lot of mums whose children were at school said, for the first time, I was with my child full time again, because you weren't going to work, because you was in lockdown. You couldn't leave the house because you was in lockdown. So, yeah.
Thank you very much for that, Bianca. It was a fantastic session. We are very grateful for your input. And it's interesting, as you were talking, I'm connecting Alicia in my head, because some of the things that you've said, Alicia and I we constantly have conversation, about that, because we speak quite a lot. So we do have conversation about homeschooling, sometimes not even on the program, we're just talking about homeschooling and what some of the things we've identified, etc. So it's really lovely hearing your input on that. And it is also such an eye-opener for some parents who just want to homeschool. It doesn't have to be a big reason as to why they're homeschooling. And for me, I am passionate about it, although I have not homeschooled for myself. I have not homeschooled my children or my child. I have not homeschooled any of them. But I was involved in Saturday school. So in terms of that, I see the value of doing the extra. And it's really nice, because we are about putting homeschooling on the map. For me, it's very, very important that parents and carers see an alternative. So I'm on this mission to put homeschooling on the map, so that people realize that homeschooling is very, very valuable, and children could do the same thing. They could do the GCSE. It doesn't have to be in a school setting. It could be in a center. It's like today I was just saying to someone who was saying to me, oh, well, where would a child do the GCSE? I said, there's so many centers around that you could register your child to do the GCSE and then do it in a center. So that's not a problem. So, it's just really nice that people know that there are alternatives to the traditional education. And both Alicia and I, have been in the traditional education, and we know Well, let me just phrase this one quite carefully. Well, there are gaps, right? I know there are gaps, and not every educator are an educator. There's some educators out there who are there for different reasons. You know, I'll just leave that there. Anyway.
Yeah.
I'll just leave that there before I start getting attacked. But Tebi, you're an educator, and what you're saying that I'm an educator, I know that, but it's not always right. It's not always right. There's some educators out there, I wouldn't even want them to come near to my child. I wouldn't even want them to come near to my pet, much less my child. You know, I don't want them to come close because you know they're there for the wrong reason, and it doesn't empower the child. And I think it's important that education empowers people.
Yeah. There's a lot of teachers as well, and I know everyone's going through things, but there's a lot of teachers that are unable to separate, you know, their life at home, outside the school, inside the school. And there has been incidents where children have suffered because of that. So a common one is when a teacher's going through a divorce. When a teacher's going through a divorce, I mean, I know there's probably policies that they can take leave and stuff. But, you know, most teachers will just come into school, you know, got bills to pay. And sometimes, you know, that can just, you know, it can be taken out in the classroom. You know, some you know, divorce is, I mean, I've never experienced that, but divorce is a heavy thing to go through. And when you come into school and you got the children to look after, sometimes it can just become a lot, and teachers, their minds cannot be there sometimes. They're not really focusing because they've got so much going on outside. And unfortunately, if your child's in that classroom and that's the teacher of that classroom, sometimes the children, they're the ones that have to like suffer. And that's why I say management in schools is a big thing, because when we are going through these life experiences, whether it's a loss in the family, my husband's divorced me, I don't know, you know, whatever it, you know, I've just been diagnosed with something life-threatening. Sometimes, you know, the employers don't give teachers that break. You know, I mean, I don't know how it works, but I feel that sometimes teachers may run out of their leave and they have to come back, or whatever the reasons are. But I just think sometimes teachers do need to have that break, because, yeah, if you don't have that break and you're in the classroom, it can the teacher is still human.
Yep.
And when I speak about divorce, even though I've never been through it myself, but I've heard that it's almost like dealing with a loss in the family. And teachers are going through divorces and stuff, and they're coming into the classroom, and they've asked, like, the employer or head or whoever it is, can I just have some time off? You know, sorry. So imagine dealing with that, you know, and then coming into school. I do feel it for teachers. I feel that I just know that they are human.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting you say that, and I keep on repeating on my platform all the time. People tend to forget that, for and foremost, we are human beings. And we just happen to be in a job that is an education job that runs all year long, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. They fail to realize that we are human as well, because when was COVID just started, and teachers were saying they had some fear going back into the classroom to teach. Everybody was attacking us. Oh, who they think they are, etc. And I had to put that on my platform just to remind people out there, you are afraid. You're a human being. We too we are afraid because we're human beings too. So just spare a thought for us educators that we just happen to be teachers. We have children just like you. We are all parents, we all wives, mothers, daughters, etc. We all of those things. And you know, it's interesting you say that because it is forgotten so many times. Because people just see us as teachers, teach my child, but you should have no emotion. We should not, because we're robots. I'm afraid I am not a robot, I'm a human being. So don't think I'm super. Don't say that I am super super whatever. You know,
you're not like the games that my son plays.
Exactly. I'm none of those, you know, those super things people trying to say, oh yes, well, teachers are, you know, all this thing. No, we're not. We're human beings.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that needs to be remembered. Thank you very much. Alisa, do you have anything else to say before we wrap up?
No, I just want to say thank you so much, Bianca. Thank you for coming on and sharing your journey with us. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, reinforce that thank you. It was a fantastic session. Good evening, good night, good morning, everybody. Hope that you guys are enjoying the platform in terms of home educating. And we are doing that every week on, what is it? On a Saturday at 6 p.m. UK. 6 p.m. UK time. Alicia and I would be here with another guest next week. So if you all are, if there are any home educators out there who would like to be on the show, you could reach out to us on our Facebook platform, or PM me. If you just, you know, Google Debbie Eno, I'll come up, and then just send us a PM message and we would actually get in touch with you, because we are always looking for home educators or female educators. Home educators doesn't have to be female. We are looking at both male and female, because last week we had a couple, you know, but when I'm actually talking about female educators, talking about their journey 12 months after, sorry guys, this is just for my female audience. Anyway, thank you very much guys for being there, for coming onto the platform. We do appreciate you, and see you guys next week at the same time, the same place. We'll be there. Bye-bye.